Thank you, Michael. Good afternoon. Please be aware that this session is being recorded. For those of you who did not attend our presentation this morning, I'm M.Crowley. Jonah, Bradenday, and I work in BCBI, the Brown Center for Biomedical Informatics. We also assist researchers through BCBI's service arm, the Advanced RI-CTR Biomedical Informatics, Bioinformatics, and Cyberinfrastructure Enhancement Core, or BIBC Core. We're pleased to join Brown's celebration of Love Data Week by presenting Need Health Data Codes, an introduction to health terminologies. I'm a biomedical informatician and manager of health data science here at BCBI, and I have a great interest in leveraging data to support and improve clinical care and the health of individuals and populations. Healthcare terminologies are used to capture, classify, and analyze data to support the conduct of healthcare, manage the payments associated with healthcare, and facilitate research to improve the health of individuals and populations. A healthcare terminology consists of a vocabulary of terms for precise, unambiguous communication, associated codes to facilitate computer processing of those terms, and an organization of those terms and codes to enable search and retrieval. Let's play with some Legos. Let's say that each brick represents a vocabulary term. In this terminology, the terms are classified or organized by shape or size, and each term is assigned a code. In another terminology, each brick, each brick again represents a vocabulary term, and there may be similar terms or the same terms, but they're classified differently. In this vocabulary, they're classified by color, and they're assigned different codes. Deviating a little bit, and I'll bring this all together in a couple of slides. A healthcare common data model, or a CDM, organizes data into a standard structure to facilitate data sharing and research. The Observational Medical Outcomes Partnership, or OMOP CDM, from the Observational Health Data Sciences and Informatics, or Odyssey community, has been adopted by the National COVID Cohort Collaborative, N3C, and the All of Us program to structure their data repositories. Other healthcare common data models include I2B2, the CoreNet, ACT, and Trinetics. So in an extremely simplistic example, coded terms from our first terminology are brought together with terms from our second terminology and then harmonized to the common data model's structure and given a new code. Use of a common data model can facilitate both centralized and a federated research model. In the centralized model, organizations with health data contribute that data to a secure central repository, and researchers can obtain access and conduct their research within that environment. In the federated research model, one or more research institutions will develop a computerized research protocol and share that protocol with researchers at other institutions, who then will run that protocol and share the results back. And then the results are statistically combined to produce a final result. All this to say that standard health terminologies and common data models are vital to the conduct of research with real-world data. So now I'll turn it over to Jonah to explain to us how we go about finding these codes.
Hello, I'm Jonah Bradenday again. And I'm the health applications analyst at BCBI. And among other roles, I'm on the other end of the URSA ticketing system. So if you have any questions about the stuff that we're talking about today, just reach out to us at ursa-help@brown.edu and we'll get back to you. I'm going to be talking about different methods for finding these health terminology codes, as well as code sets. So code sets being the pre-gathered and categorized groupings of these codes. And there are several methods for finding both codes and code sets, but we do recommend that your research teams use more than one of the methods just to ensure that you find as many relevant codes as possible for use in your research study. And we'll start with code sets. The first place we recommend looking for these code groupings is in your research literature. And this will likely be from articles that you have already gathered at the beginning of your research process from studies similar to your own. And by checking the methods and appendix sections of this research literature, you may find lists of codes as well as descriptions of logic used in, say, defining a cohort or other analysis parameters. In fact, for our example that we're drawing from today, it comes from a BMJ article that contains just that. It has a description of every single bit of logic they used, as well as a complete list of all the codes that the project used throughout the course of their study. And I'll mention here that regardless of the method that your team is using for finding codes, every code that you gather should be reviewed by both your PI and a subject matter expert to ensure that the codes are relevant to the topic of your study. The next method I'll discuss for finding code sets are community-reviewed lists. These are resources on the internet that contain code sets that have been created and reviewed by other members of the research community. Two of these tools, the Odyssey Atlas demo and the National COVID Cohort Collaborative, the N3C Enclave, have far greater functionality than just finding codes and code sets, but they are very useful in this regard too. The Odyssey Atlas demo, which is a publicly available version of the Atlas platform, is constantly being updated with new code sets or concept sets, as they're called in both of these platforms. These concept sets are being built by other study teams for use in the Atlas platform. Because the Atlas demo is publicly available, one thing to keep in mind is that anyone can edit these concept sets, anyone can add or take away codes. So your teams should just make extra sure to review all codes that you gather, especially when you taken from a resource like this. Some of the concept sets are more official than others. For example, if the concept or code group has a prefix of phenotype February, PhiFeb, or something like that. PhiFeb short for Phenotype February, which is a initiative run by the Odyssey Consortium. That's more official than a concept set without any prefix, where we don't really know where it came from, who built it. Atlas is also great for looking at the OMOP concept hierarchy, which explores the relationships between OMOP concepts. You can start broadly and look at, say, a concept for general diabetes. And then through that concept, you can look at the more specific version of diabetes. The children concepts is what they're called. You could look at type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and then you could go even further and look at specific types of type 2 diabetes, and so on. The N3C Enclave, the other tool here, is also constantly being updated with new concept sets. Some of these, or actually many of them, are N3C recommended. So this means that the N3C recommends these concept sets for research use. So these are a little bit more official than the ones you might find in Atlas, because they've been recommended by a larger organization. There are fewer concept sets in the N3C Enclave than there are in the Atlas demo, because they are limited by the scope of existing N3C studies. And to access the N3C enclave, you do have to be an N3C registered researcher. However, if you're just interested in looking at some of these concepts or using them elsewhere, not in N3C, my team has pre-downloaded all of the N3C recommended concept sets as of a couple months ago. And you can reach out to us and we can send you a list. The final method for looking at code sets that I'll talk about is maps and indexes. These can come in the form of CSV files or as interactable web-based platforms, but the idea should be the same when working with them. You start broadly, you search concepts broadly, and then you apply filters, adding more and more specificity until you have a list of codes that you're happy with. These are all examples of maps and indexes categorized by domain. So we have some diagnoses resources, medications resources, and procedures, as well as vocabulary. So there's ICD codes, NDC codes, ATC codes, and so on. And I'm gonna go over a brief example using pCodeX to find a list of type 2 diabetes codes, ICD codes. But even though the tools might differ from one another a little bit, they should be similar in the process where you start broad and you add more specificity. So if you're using pCodeX to find a list of type 2 diabetes ICD codes, you're going to start by going to the pCodeX website and downloading the CSV file, pCodeX ICD CM map flat. And then you open that file in the spreadsheet software of your choice. And working from right to left, you're going to apply filters until the ICD column contains a list of codes that you're happy with. So first of all, type 2 diabetes, that's a form of diabetes, which is a metabolic endocrine disorder. So in the category column on the far right, I filtered for the value endocrine metab. And then working left, in the phi code string category or column, I found a value for type 2 diabetes, which is exactly what we're looking for. So I filtered for that value, which leaves the ICD column full of values that are either directly pertaining to type 2 diabetes or child concepts of type 2 diabetes, so more specific versions of type 2 diabetes. So I can then copy that list of codes for use elsewhere, say in maybe a data extract specification or in an N3C study. Which brings me to translating codes. Depending on the data model used in your health data partners database, you may need to translate your codes. So I mentioned you might want to use your list of codes in an N3C study. The problem is N3C uses the OMOP common data model. And if you use pCodeX to generate your list of codes, you might be really happy with that list. It might be very relevant to your study, but ICD codes are not OMOP, so they would need to be translated to the OMOP version before you're able to use them in the N3C enclave. BCBI developed a Julia program that does just this. You input a list of ICD codes, you run the program, and it outputs the OMOP equivalent of those codes, which would be SNOMED OMOP concept IDs. And then you can then use that list of codes in N3C enclave or some other place that takes OMOP codes. In the previous slides, I discussed methods for finding concept sets or code sets, code groupings, but you might very well need to only search one code, or you might already have one code, you just want to know more about it. These are all examples of resources you could find to search up a single code and then maybe explore some of the related codes or just get more detail about that code. And again, all of these are going to operate a little differently, but for the most part, they're all browsers of some sort. So you search a code and you filter the results and you find a code you like. And again, it's categorized by domain, so diagnoses, medications, procedures, measurements, as well as vocabulary. Some of these, like Athena and the ULMS Metathesaurus browser, are good for searching all sorts of vocabularies, while others, such as the ICD-10 browser tool, are really only designed for one type of vocabulary. And I'll be showing an example of how you might use the Athena concept browser to search a concept of type 2 diabetes. And as I said, you can use the Athena concept browser for all sorts of vocabularies, though most of its functionality is tailored towards OMOP codes. So once you open Athena, you'll see a search bar, and there you can either search by like human readable description, as I did on the upper right image, type 2 diabetes mellitus, or you could search by code or concept ID. As you can see in the results in the ID and the code column, I could search by one of those numeric codes or alphanumeric codes, and I would get similar results. And then once you've searched for a concept, you're able to filter the results. On the left, you can filter by a couple things, but two filters that I use often are domain and vocabulary. Domain is, it allows you to filter for maybe only diagnoses, because diabetes is a diagnosis. So you wouldn't necessarily want to see medications that are similar to type 2 diabetes, at least in description. And then vocabulary filter, that just allows you to apply a filter for, say, just ICD codes or just SNOMED codes, just to narrow down your search a little bit more. Once you've found a code that you like, you can click on it. So if I clicked on type 2 diabetes mellitus right at the top, I would then, from the resulting window, I would then be able to explore both of the related concepts. So concepts that are similar to this concept, maybe they're in a different vocabulary, or maybe they're related in some other way. Or I could explore the concept hierarchy. And again, this is just for, within Athena, you're only able to explore the concept hierarchy for OMOP codes. But if I were to click on the concept hierarchy viewer, this bottom image is that. In the middle, you'll see the selected code, so type 2 diabetes mellitus. On the left of that code is that concept's parent concept. Diabetes mellitus is the broader version of type 2 diabetes. So type 2 diabetes is a more specific version of diabetes. And on the right of the code are all of the selected concepts, child or children concepts. So every one of those is a more specific version of type 2 diabetes. For example, pregnancy and type 2 diabetes is more specific than just type 2 diabetes. And that's it. We still definitely have time for questions. But again, if you have any questions about what we talked about today and you remember the question later, or if you want to reach out to use some of these resources, just send us an email at ursa-help@brown.edu, and we'll get back to you pretty quickly. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? Getting some claps. Okay, I don't think there's any questions. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.